Welcome back to the show, everyone. As always, I'm Captain Foley, and I am joined by my trusty cohort and partner in crime, Commander Samuel Calkins.
Hi guys, and we have another amazing special designer guest for you today.
That's right. Today we're talking with one of my personal favorite Star Trek designers, Andrew Probert, everyone. Welcome back to the show, Andrew.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
We always learn so much when you join us, so I'm eager to see what this episode holds in store.
Okay.
Me too.
Okay, so today's topic is Battleship. We've already done as a mission briefing, so it'll be interesting to get maybe a few of those questions we've had answered at long last.
I know you're all in suspense to find out what it is. Or wait, you're probably not, because you already saw the thumbnail and read the description to bring you here. But anyway, without further delay, we bring you Designing the Romulan Drydock Battleship from TNG with Andrew Probert. Yeah, that's...
It's kind of funny. Look how opposing this ship actually looks like coming in. Like, that looks pretty damn snazzy, just doing that maneuver.
Indeed.
Hit the camera. So, first question. The first one that pops in my head, Andrew. Honestly, though, who came up with the name Romulan Warbird or the Drydock? Was it yourself or was it the writers? And how did it actually happen that you were given the task to design this very first Romulan ship? Well, the first one, I should say, since the one we saw in TOS.
No, I didn't name it. It was named in the script as Warbird. It wasn't named whatever it ended up being named later. But it was just another one of the guest ships. During that first season, ships would come up in the scripts, and I would be the one to design them. This puppy came along, and it was to be a kind of a big deal. So I did some research on past Romulan ships and tried to come up with something. Well, kind of, but somewhere in the series, in the TOS series, Romulans were flying Klingon ships.
So let's go back to the first day on the ship. Were there any specific ship descriptions or any other details in the script that you knew you had to incorporate?
Well, that's a good question. I really don't remember. It was basically something that we've never seen before. It's a new design. What have they been doing since the last time? It's that kind of, oh my gosh, look at this. So obviously it had to be something that fit that description, something they'd never seen before. Since the little pancake version, that's right, that little one, had a bird on the bottom of it, I'd started basically with that idea. And you'll be able to see in my in some of my preliminary sketches that I drew that as a starting point, and then I started going into basically bird-like shapes to maintain that sort of continuity.
But it's one of those things where, you said things evolve through history, but obviously if you take a look at the two designs, I mean, the architecture is quite different. So why did you take such a drastic departure? Why not something a bit more along the same lines?
Well, because it's been, according to the script, it'd been how many years? I don't know. I don't remember the story, 20 years or so.
Or more than
80, I think. I think it was 80 or 90 years.
And a lot of technology has been developed since that first version, obviously, and I wanted to reflect that. And I wanted to come up with a bigger size to be more intimidating.
So as a designer, you take this original ship, the Bird of Prey, or whatever we call it, from TOS, there's not that much design-wise to pull from, apart from obviously the part you already highlighted, the bird shape. When you first looked at it, were there any elements you thought that design stylistically I should keep? Having notable nacelles, having a cannon at the front, having this neck detail. I mean, was there anything you saw as like, this is obviously a Romulan hardcore aesthetic that I need to keep? Or was it such a simple design that you really thought, that's not?
Well, to put it in those words, I would say, because, basically, I just, like I said, and you can see in my drawings right away, I started with the idea of a bird and just built directly from that, starting from scratch, basically. because they said it's like nothing we've ever seen, or it's such a new design. They didn't know what it was, so
Mm.
it couldn't be similar. It's like, that looks like a Romulan ship. It had to be like, whoa, what is that?
Well, the most notable design elements for me are how much bigger it is than previous Romulan ship designs, and also the fact that it's green. And that kind of makes sense in a way because the Bird of Prey from Star Trek 3, A Search for Spock, was, in an early draft anyways, a Romulan design and not Klingon. So did you use any design cues from that ship to arrive for this finished version?
No, I didn't even choose the color that I remember.
Hmm.
I might have hinted at it. Um, Thinking back, I might have hinted at it in one of my sketches, but I was really kind of surprised at how green it was. It's like, oh look, it's from Ireland. It's like, I mean, it was really green. The actual model is gray. So they tinted it up somehow in post, but people are very surprised to hear that. But if you see pictures of the actual model, it's gray. It's an odd kind of gray.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Were you picturing a more complicated, multifaceted paint scheme then when you designed it?
No, I really didn't. I just I wanted to model the paneling somewhat after the Bird of Prey, but to give it a little bit of continuity in that direction. But I did not really envision multiple colors all over this ship. Pretty much one or two colors. Not as much as the rainbow version that Stuart's holding.
Well, I talk about this later. It's the one I painted, but
Yeah.
I'll ask you about that later.
Was there a point then that you thought you were actually going to include the completely, painted on bird motif? Because there certainly is, I suppose, locations you could do it, either in the internal space or at the bottom. Was that ever a thought to carry over?
I don't remember if the thought had occurred to me to put a bird motif on the bottom of this or not. That certainly would have tied it in even more. I might have, and then I might have discarded it. But
yeah, it's a bit of an odd choice.
Yeah.
So one thing Stuart approached in his previous question is how much bigger the ship is, and it's certainly a marvel to see on screen. We know that the Drydock is 4,440 feet, and the Enterprise D is 2,180 feet. And as we talked about before, the Enterprise D is meant to be the big new ship. So that says a lot, given how much bigger the Enterprise D was meant to be compared to other ships. You really made this thing huge. So to have a ship that was much, 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 much bigger visually and just pure size-wise than the D, what was the thought behind such a huge ship?
Bigger is scarier sometimes. In the script, I'm thinking that there was something that made me think that the ship should be very intimidating. So I just wanted to increase that intimidation by a factor of 2 at least.
So why, in your mind, apart from the intimidation, for a race that used to rely on cloaking devices and relatively small ships that then stayed hidden for multiple decades, why do you think they would build such a humongous ship, given there aren't many ships in the entire galaxy for multiple decades even? I think only the Jem'Hadar Battleship is of a relative size. Is this pure scale? Why do you think they would go along that design pathway?
My thinking probably was that it like the Enterprise would be a multi-generational ship out for extended periods of time, and plus they would have conceivably a lot of goodies to carry. The thing is that it wasn't built exactly as I designed it. You'll notice in the front underside there are 2 large cargo doors that in the Greg Jean version go to nothing, and in the Probert drawing basically go all the way back to the tail. That whole bottom section is full. It doesn't hollow out the way it does when Jean built it. So
cool.
That was intended for very large cargo and possibly assault ships and all kinds of other things that they would want to have. It has a shuttle bay up above in the tail, in the upper portion of the tail. It's kind of a small indent. Yeah,
Oh, this little tiny thing right there.
that's it. Yeah, that's a shuttle bay.
Wow.
On the above the shoulder, directly center line is their photon torpedo tube.
Right here.
Yeah, because my version doesn't shoot torpedoes out of the navigational deflector.
Yeah.
Yeah, we speculated on that on our mission briefing, and we've thought
Yeah.
that was a navigational deflector too. So
Well, that does bring up an interesting question, though. When you designed her, the name as it was sort of Warbird, did you think of her as a battleship? You've always said generational, but battleship or just ship of the line like the Galaxy class was?
Yes. A generational battleship.
Okay.
What can I tell you? I mean, it would carry troops. It would carry all kinds of, like I said, bad guy things. So I just felt that it had to be much larger.
Mhm.
And again, it wasn't built with the compartments below. I mean, if you, Stuart, go to that, go to those double hanger, and I'm keep going to him because his model's bigger.
Mhm.
If you go directly behind those on the inside,
Mhm.
if you drew a line from that straight back, that's
Yep.
what I'm talking about. That whole area would be full. In
Okay,
fact,
yeah.
if you look at my painting, which I'll also include from the ships of the line, I painted that the way it was designed, basically. So, if I remember right, so you can sort of see what might have been.
So when you designed this for TNG, you were basically creating the new aesthetic, which other designers have since respected since John Eves with his ship from Nemesis. So what did you actually add that you thought would become the new aesthetic? What did you see being the definitive parts of Romulan design into this new shape? Was there anything you thought might be a legacy piece that could carry on?
No, I never did anything that deep.
Well, apart from the bird motif, I suppose that was your big.
That was my big push, was
Yeah.
just to reinforce the name Warbird because that was in the script.
So do you think, kind of a silly question, this has it was a very interesting shape you've chosen for this beak, but obviously we can't think on human terms. So do you think this is literally based off a Romulus bird? Maybe the falcon of the bird world on Romulus. Do you think it's literally a one-to-one to one of those species?
Well, of course.
Excellent.
Don't you recognize the Romulan bird that was created after? I don't know. I was actually going for more of a kind of a seagull look, but I just I wanted it to be, obviously you look at it and you go, hey, that looks like a bird. It's a warbird. But because the eyes on it are actually phaser banks. The nostril area is not a photon torpedo tube. It's a navigational deflector.
You heard it here, guys, because a lot of people display it as a plasma torpedo launcher.
Yeah, that's because the effects guys don't bother to ask the designers what the parts are. They just put stuff in there.
Yeah.
That's like having beams coming out of the captain's yacht and other kinds of weird things coming out of the nav deflector. They don't care. It's like, oh well, we'll just stick it here, and now it's canon, so nobody can argue with it. Well,
one of the things I found most interesting is when there's a picture next to us of these in the Romulan Drydocks, where there's cargo ships loading cargo into these forward sections.
yes.
And this is more built up in here, much like Samuel said, like a Mayan temple kind of look.
I think it's a Mayan temple. It's got that sort of interesting step detailing rather than a flat surface. It's got that nice detailing.
So, did that carry on to the top as well of this in your original design? Was there more up there as well?
Well, there were to have been beefier sections in the top as well. They'll be able to see exactly what it was I had intended for the Romulan Warbird to look like. The Drydock lights are magnetically suspended so that they can move them to wherever they need to.
That is
Um,
excellent.
you can also see another kind of a pop-up part of the dry dock that's down below, and that also indicates it's basically a work platform. It's like the equivalent of the work bee cranes on the dry dock for Next Generation. I mean, for the motion picture.
And it is certainly an interesting dry dock design. This must have been a humongous construction because the Warbird himself is a humongous design. Oof.
Well, each of the stations. There's a couple of different stations, as you'll see in the painting, that house factories and supplies and all kinds of things to probably rebuild a Warbird almost entirely. I mean, you'd be able to pull an engine into there, one of the warp engines.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's a huge facility, and while we're on that subject, it's designed to be to house two Warbirds, which are facing outward, for a couple of reasons. One, it's a lot quicker to leave dry dock rather than the old back out thing that the Enterprise had to do. I tried to give a suggestion for that Enterprise to be able to pull out forward, which didn't go anywhere. But in this case, the Warbirds are back in because a lot of their facilities for the Warbirds can be replenished at the back. There's a whole cluster of levels and offices and other accommodations at the back of the Warbird to receive cargo and personnel and all kinds of other things for refurbishing. So that's a reason to back them in as well.
And this is obviously, you've drawn this. This is your mental representation of what the Warbird should look like, and you've given some interesting an actual semi-color scheme to the front. You've got far more black detailing to accentuate certain. It almost feels as if it's skin with bone underneath, and you've now got a red feather line almost on the top. Do you want to talk us through why you've accentuated those details? And it certainly gives it a much more dramatic look. I think it's more aggressive and also more like a dying bird, but that in itself gives it a scary feel, in my interpretation anyway.
It's war paint.
There you go, works for me.
I guess I was thinking that the different Warbirds would have different center stripes. It's only in the sort of the top notch, if you will. That whole front section actually separates. It's designed to blow away from the rest of the ship. But so each one of those would be marked with a different color, mostly for identification amongst their own squadrons. So it's not particularly meant to intimidate or to enhance anything. It's more of an identification mark in case they had to go just to rely strictly on visuals.
Now, did you see that potentially, because this is such an interesting design and because it's so largely scaled, do you think they made smaller versions of the same basic design that could be used for cruiser roles or whatnot? Because obviously there's a lot of, you could just compress it and still have a very functional design because it is such a big design innately. Do you think there are smaller versions as well, or is this is the one?
I didn't take it to the sort of the fleet status. If there were smaller versions, they would be without the lower wing portion. That basically is their cargo and ancillary ship storage. So it's really not needed for flight. That whole lower section could be eliminated on a smaller ship.
So that's their tertiary section. You've got the primary hull, secondary hull. It's their tertiary hull almost.
Yeah, you could look at it that way for sure.
You've mentioned it briefly, but do you want to talk us through the reasoning behind why there is such a large empty space in the middle, and as you say, the line of sight? But talk us through the reason behind that, and if there's any specific strengths or weaknesses you can think to have such an interesting design choice. I know we speculated in our mission briefing that At the lower section, there are lifts for shuttles to come up and down, because that's a natural place to launch fighters, because obviously they could launch and have ample room to leave, and yet the surface area to conceal dozens of hangar bays. So what are your thoughts on those?
It's kept open just to maintain the continuity of warp engines being able to see each other. Again, originally, some of my earlier drawings just had just a single wing on top with the two warp engines, and then I added the other section below just to give it more carrying capability. Some of the earlier designs actually had this ship. It was my intention to really have this as a vertical ship. Once I got past that kind of an idea, I went to a vertical idea because I thought that would better contrast with the Enterprise, because the Enterprise, all the shapes are predominantly horizontal. So I thought if you had a vertical Warbird set against the horizontal Enterprise, and I did a little sketch to point that out. Rick Berman was in charge of the show by that time, and he insisted that it be horizontal, like everything else in the show. It'd be like a Saturn rocket. Well, let's see, the Saturn rocket should be this way because it fits the screen. There's certain things that are vertical, Empire State Building or towers or whatever, that are simply vertical, and you back the camera. If you go in close and you can't see the top and bottom, then that really tells you how big it is.
That is a good point.
So, especially with the Enterprise being as large as it is.
But are you more happy with the end horizontal result? It looks more bird-like and
Yeah.
Or is that?
It feels more natural. It feels more naturalistic.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
Yeah, not really. I prefer the vertical layout, because people don't do vertical ships, and there's no reason in space not to. As far as practicality reasons, I suppose horizontal works for the cargo sections and that sort of thing, because our minds say that we need to keep everything on a horizontal, especially with artificial gravity. So, but cargo decks in a vertical system could just simply be stacked. You would have. I did another calendar painting of a vertical capital ship, which is much bigger than this, and those have horizontal cargo decks and flight decks, so they have multiple decks for fighters and other kinds of attack ships, along with everything else. So it really depends. In a weekly TV show, you really don't have a lot of time to design the way that you would if you had like a month to really think it out and plan it out and everything. So the first thing you want to go for is drama. Well, the first thing I want to go for is consistency. Then I want to go for drama and look, and hope the two reinforce each other.
Well, we've seen pictures of this vertical version, and it is pretty amazing. It gives a totally different feel, and it is interesting. It's obviously the same basic design, but everything's flipped. And I think it's probably fair to say that since you are the designer of this original aesthetic, there's variants that are both, because the design could easily be flipped, just mechanically, possibly. I don't think there's that much stopping it. So I'm happy to say there's that version out there as well. We just didn't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's because they kept that hidden. But
exactly, it's too impressive to there'd be two Captain Picard be like, that's even bigger. Break his mind too much.
But people seem to like this Warbird a lot, so I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, it is a fan favorite, absolutely. Okay, so here's the model I created, Andrew. Isn't it beautiful? Don't you love my paint scheme where you can see the highlighted feathers?
Those are two different questions. Yes,
feel free to answer both. Is that something you would approve of as the designer, having the bird motif actually highlighted and shown off as in TOS?
Several thoughts are really racing through my mind right now.
Please
say them all.
Them.
I don't care. Bad, good, whatever.
Terrible. Just continue.
Not terrible.
It's a little garisher than I would paint my ship,
Okay. Yeah.
especially if you know. I mean, that would be like having a pink battleship or a day glow aircraft carrier, maybe. I don't know.
I was just trying to keep the TOS aesthetic and have the feather motif really pop. So I don't know. My next part of the question is about these. These are escape pods. You said
Yeah, lifeboats.
lifeboats, and here as well, right?
Correct.
Cool. And they're painted nice and gold, just like the Enterprise Ds are yellow. So
Actually, they're gray, but
I know.
it's a whole different story.
I'm sorry.
But that's nice because that's one of the things we speculated in the mission briefing. Glad we got that right. Another thing we speculated is if the ship could separate, because when I look at the ship, I see the shapes have natural lines to be removed from each other. I'm very glad you said that the neck can push off, I suppose, and as you said, the bottom bit is a cargo bay. So it's got 3 separation points. Now, was that initially the design concept? That, as you say, it can split into 3. And then what would be the functionality of each separate piece if those lines did exist as a canon piece of tech?
No, the bottom half separating was not really in my original charter, but the front of the Warbird, the head, if you will, I had thought to separate, and it would be there's a neck piece that curves up at the top, yeah, just above the eye. There's a piece that comes from the neck, and the top notch fits on top of that. It wraps around and then becomes the rest of the head.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll send you a drawing.
And what functionality did you see this piece having, or in what? Is it very much an escape boat sort of situation, or does it have maybe some faster than light capacity itself?
Just a way, in case the rest of the ship had been damaged or was incapable of flight, then at least a certain faction of the crew could escape in the front part of that.
Although I'm sure, given the size of the ship, if the transporters are offline, if they're told Jerry to run from this side to this side before it separates, don't think you'd be able to do that run.
Well, the fronters are where all the officers are.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask. So is that, I suppose, weapons? Because you said the eyes weapons, or is that just officers and control interface areas, or what else might be in that section?
Bathrooms,
Those are important.
Everyone needs to know where the bathrooms are.
Yes, this is true.
No, I didn't. I really didn't go that far. Just a variety of living quarters and laboratories and more sophisticated things. More of the crew quarters would be in what you would think of as the wings, the upper wing areas. There's a shuttle bay in the back top. So that whole upper area would be basically in this Warbird would be more like shuttlecraft and ancillary ships.
So no windows in the crew quarters then, I take it.
Hell no.
What about this section back here? What was this engineering or?
Same thing. Yeah, pretty much engineering with a warp conduit going to to the top, dividing to go to both engines, top and bottom.
So where are the impulse engines?
That's a really good question. I'd have to look at my drawings to answer that. I would be really surprised if I forgot them.
I would too.
Good question.
Thank you.
Well, maybe Romulans are not impulsive.
So two last questions on the design before we go to the next question. How many crew members do you see on board? First of all.
Wow, probably 10,000. I don't know. The Enterprise, my Enterprise D, was designed for 3,600 crew and officers. I told that to Gene, and he said, "Oh, we don't have enough extras to show that, so we'll say it's a crew of 1,100 people." Canon, it's like, but wait a minute, it's an aircraft carrier has way more than that, and it's smaller. to heck with logic. So this ship being larger, now I don't know about the mass on it, and and again, there's cargo spaces and all kinds of other unplanned, unaccounted for at this moment spaces.
Mhm.
So I would certainly say, let's say 5,000, 5 to 10,000. You know, I mean, they could carry troops, that would be jammed in those compartments
With no windows, yeah.
with no windows. They all have iPads.
Yeah, I like it. And this ship is obviously well known for having a cloaking device, and we know that this ship has the original Romulan can cloak, but it's somewhat limited. This one's cloak is pretty much flawless in essence. How big did you see that cloaking device being? Would it take up, a large section of the hull? Do you know where it would have been put, or would it be so small and efficient by now, even though it's having to cloak such a humongous vessel?
I I totally agree with you. It would be in the upper section.
Mhm.
Again, my upper section is thicker, is meant to be thicker than what it ended up being. But it would be behind, it'd be about midsection.
And you'd have it on the
Uh,
internal space rather than the external for
yeah,
adaptation.
yeah, yeah. It would be up inside that
Mhm.
that area.
Now, we've also established that this is indeed a deflector and not a plasma torpedo launcher. Now, when you also mentioned that this is a photon torpedo launcher up at the front here, right?
Correct.
So how many photon torpedo launchers did you see it having? Is it just that one? And was there ever any intention of having a plasma torpedo launcher to carry on that TOS weapons design?
Which was part of half of the design aspect of the original TOS ship.
Yeah.
For me, photon torpedo is generic, like Kleenex is generic for tissues, or Xerox for copiers. So, yeah, it squirted out a big bullet out of that hole that was supposed to. I thought that I added one on the bottom, but I may not have. Do you see any openings similar to that on the bottom?
No, just where the stand goes.
Yeah, doesn't count. Okay,
There's
so
this thing here. Could that be a weapon? Maybe, I don't know. That looks like a great place to slap a weapon.
it depends on who's looking at it and why.
For such a large vessel, though, and one that you'd assume needs to have a lot of coverage because basically every other ship in the galaxy is smaller than it. And if you get the shields down, or if you can somehow go through the shields, if you get to fly inside, there's a great shot in one of the video games, one of the animated intros, where a Defiant literally flies through the middle, drops mines, and blows up the middle. Did you see a large variety and implement of pulse defense systems or smaller disruptors all throughout the top and bottom to provide complete coverage to stop these weaknesses potentially in the design? Did you see it being that well armed and that well thought out defense-wise?
No, because I thought it out, so it's not that well thought out. I just assumed that we could rely on all of those external blisters, those those ray guns that it has.
And if I count mine correctly, there's 13 of those all over the ship.
Why would I come up with an uneven number?
Maybe these ones aren't really those because they're not the same shape, but
No, they're not.
okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
On the bottom. Are there any on the inside bottom or inside back? Yeah, there's two.
These ones?
Yeah, those are phasers.
Oh, well, they're flat like these ones though, so I assume that they're not. Might just be the model.
Yeah, it's the model.
Although you did mention a bridge, because we know that the D is far, far smaller, and the bridge is so relatively small, the same size as the TOS, in fact, you said previously, and this ship is so much bigger, so you talk about a bridge design you actually envisioned for this ship.
Yeah, and if you look, it actually looks like there's multiple decks to the bridge, so is that...
Well, where is the bridge? I mean, is it in the front? It doesn't need to be in the front? I mean, where's the bridge, Andrew? Told us about the bridge.
Well, there's one in San Francisco, there's one in New York. In this particular ship, it's not falling down. It's in the kind of the center top-notch part, and it's visible by a small, relatively small oblong shape. It's probably invisible on your ship, but
Yeah.
Stuart,
Probably right about here.
nope.
I don't have any
Up
here.
up. Up, it's right there. But they don't have it in there. Look at my painting. And you can see it. That's weird. It's not in the model. If you look in that red section above the Warbird logo, just above that, you can see the bridge opening and a window. Basically, this has a window. And yeah, this deck is, or this bridge is probably about 4 decks high.
Wow.
Wow.
But it's not particularly deep, just tall, but all present against that window.
Cool.
Of course, they all have their, the window can be used as a view screen, like a liquid crystal can switch in and out between opacity and translucency.
And lastly, what is your favourite and least favourite thing about this design, if you had to say? And is there anything you might have changed, possibly?
Okay, good question. Favorite and least favorite thing about the design. My least favorite thing would be if I forgot the impulse engine. I'm looking at my painting here. That is really weird. I'm sure there had to have been some of that back section, but which may not be on the model.
Might you have integrated
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe just integrated them into the nacelle. Maybe that back part of the nacelle is the impulse and the forward part is the... Because, I mean, these are humongous
Or
warp engines.
could it be that some of these feather motifs actually raise and the impulse engine pops up? That would be cool.
Could be. Stay tuned, everyone. Yeah, I really don't have a favorite thing about the ship. I just like it generally.
His favorite thing is that this many years after you design it, that we are here talking to him about it. That is what his favorite thing is.
Well, I am very pleased that the fans like it so much. It's very fulfilling to get that kind of feedback, and that kind of enthusiasm. So,
and you'll have to read the comments below because I'm sure people have a lot of good things to say and a lot of questions, I'm sure.
Questions I'm up for, as you guys well know. But and I'll always have an answer. It may not be the right one, but
it might just be yes.
It could be.
And is there anything you'd change? Any little thing, any big thing?
Anything that I would change? Well, I would, if there was time, I would certainly have them go back and flesh out the interior surfaces of those quote wing areas, because it makes it seem very hollow and weird, to not have the mass that I designed originally into it.
That does make a lot more sense for me now. I think every time I see the model, I'm now gonna mentally add that just to make it make more sense, because that's how you envisioned it. It's just kind of a strange thing to do, but.
Well, here's a question for your fans. Ask them if they want me to come up with some sort of an ancillary piece to insert into their plastic models. You know what I'm, like an accuratizing kit that.
Yeah, like a resin mold that they can add to make it more Andrew Probert original designish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be down.
But again, they'll have to look at the drawings to make that determination. But it's just, I never thought about it until now, but it's like, well, with all these printed parts and resin kits and such, that it would be something that they could add to give it to add the logic that I had originally intended.
A very cool and educational episode, to be sure. Again, thanks so much for joining us today, Andrew. It's always great to chat with you, and we definitely look forward to many more episodes with you in the future.
Me too.
Good. All right, guys, that's a wrap, as they say, for this episode. Hope you all enjoyed it, as this was a much requested and speculated on ship from the Star Trek universe. And now we finally have some of those answers, and maybe even a few more questions. And don't worry, we will still be doing a complete info-packed regular Trekyards episode on this great ship so that you can see it with the complete Trekyards treatment. So please stay tuned for that. As always, please click the like button and don't forget to subscribe, and head over to trekyards.com to catch up on any past episodes, or even if you just want to contribute to the show and help us out by clicking the donate button. Or if our weekly releases aren't enough for you and you want to have a daily dose of Trekyards, head on over to Facebook and join our Facebook page. So until next time, I'm Captain Foley.
I'm Commander Cockins.
I'm Andrew.
Jolan True, everyone.